light. Comes a day from the night. Joy shall come in the morning. Joy shall come to you. Peace shall come in the morning. Peace shall come in the morning sun. Peace shall come in the morning. Peace shall come to you. Brothers all in charity, sisters all in unity. Joy shall come in the morning. Peace shall come to you. Hope shall come in the morning. Hope shall come in the morning soon. Hope shall come in the morning. Hope shall come to you. Take this thing from the night. Open your heart with wings in flight. Hope shall come in the morning. Hope shall come to you.
Joy and peace and hope shall come to each one of us when we open our eyes in the morning, if that's what we choose. It's truly and totally up to us. When you open your eyes, and your heart and your head and your eyes and your ears all kind of wake up, what is your perception of all that is? Is it peace? Is it joy? Is it hope? Is it disgust? And remember, you haven't looked in the mirror yet, so you're just laying there by yourself. It's our choice. It's our perception, and we're going to talk a lot about perception today. Joy and peace and hope. It shall come anytime we choose, and so it is.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thanks. I see that we have some music of the spheres this morning, Michael. It was lovely, the music this morning. So on the subject of the spheres and the universe, I have been contemplating the beautiful pictures brought to us by the James Webb Space Telescope and the Hubble lately. If anyone's, you can find them on the internet, or you can find them. I think Nova is showing some of them, and NASA on TV is showing some of these beautiful, beautiful pictures that they are seeing and finding billions of varied galaxies and stars and gorgeous nebula dating as far back as 13 billion years. And it's just amazing what's going on. And when I was thinking about that, I was looking out my back window at the trees, and I thought, I've always believed there's other souls, other people, other beings on many, many planets, billions of them. But I sat there and I thought, wait a minute, those beings all have souls. That's billions of souls throughout the universe. That was just, I loved it. I loved the thought. And they are varied and they look different than ourselves. And I believe that these living beings emanate from our divine source, that there are all billions of them having souls as we do. In fact, I believe many animals here on Earth have souls as well. We've seen depictions of various varieties of beings in Star Wars, Star Trek, and the Blue Lady in the Fifth Element, if anyone appreciated that movie. And then I began to think of the visual variations, but not only that, but the differences in thought and attitude and so on that beings may have. And it reminded me of a film called Enemy Mine from 1985, and it's just giving me the chills right now. It's just a wonderful film. And it's about two fighting beings, one human and one is a reptilian, humanoid that end up marooned on a planet. And they fight at first, almost kill each other, and finally they discover that to survive on that planet, they have to begin to cooperate. And little by little, it's shown in that film that they begin to have respect for each other and begin to care for each other, and they end up having brotherly love for each other. It's just a beautiful, touching film. And it made me think, that kind of reminds me of our Earth. And I see all of us here, we have varied prejudices and ideas and conflicts. But like them, we're having a threat, an overarching threat that's coming to our planet. And I hope to see that, like them, our nations and our peoples can begin to work together and respect. And it reminded me of World War II. You know, before World War II, we didn't have NATO, we didn't have the UN. So good things sometimes can come from difficult things. And I just hope that in the future, coming together will be what the Earth, it's what we have to do to survive climate change. So I wanted to close with a quote from a wayshower in this subject, and that's Chief Seattle. He says, all things share the same breath, the beast, the tree, the man, and the air, or as I feel, the divine source, shares its spirit with all the life it supports. We are one, all one in spirit. Thank you.
Janet, thank you very much. That was an excellent mini message. I find it curious, though, as you were talking about science and the universe and all, I find it very curious why when scientists and really smart people look for signs of intelligent life, they always look somewhere other than Earth. I don't know. Good morning, everyone. It's a lovely day outside and inside. And I would like to thank our pianist this morning. I was sitting there listening, kind of being very contemplative, and I looked over and watched. He's got his eyes closed, just playing with the storm. It's like, wow. Thank you, Michael. I've got notes here. I want to remind everybody, Joan here is on me all the time to remind people to sign up on the flower calendar right inside this door in the hall on the bulletin board. What's that?
September's pretty open.
September's open. Okay. Waiting for participation and opportunities to share your abundance. So that's how it is. There's always opportunities if we just get reminded of them once in a while. Another opportunity, a lot of people may have some complaints and gripes and what are the other things they call them? Suggestions, yes, and comments. There's a box on the back table in the foyer that says comments and suggestions. You can write it down and throw it in there, and we will respond rapidly. Maybe not the way you want, but we will respond. So let me look at my notes here. We've got Healing Circle tonight at 7:30 right here.
Yes.
Natalie.
Not next weekend.
What's that?
Tonight, but not next weekend.
Next weekend, we're just not gonna, if you got something wrong, you're just gonna have to wait a week to heal it, right? Okay. Then I've got Thursday spiritual STD, book study, spiritual book study on the June, Thursday and on the 1st, okay. I just want to remind people about this building. It's 115 years old. 115. The building next door is 112 years old. We have inherited some amazing beauty. And that's not all the historical beauty we have inherited, Bonnie had a birthday just not too many days ago, and today actually happens to be Wayne Thrush's birthday. And we don't do this very often, but this is special. They are heritage landmarks, part of our history. So, Maestro, will you lead us in a rendition of Happy Birthday, please?
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Bonnie Wayne. Happy birthday to you.
That was truly an event. It was. Will not soon be forgotten. Thank you. And thank you both for being so much a part of us and our history and our present and our future. So, any other? Oh, we had a great cabaret last night, bluegrass. They were really, really good. Their harmonies were excellent. And next month, we are having a group called More Joy. And I think that's the 24th, if I'm not mistaken, the last Saturday. But we both play the same venues, their band and our band. I heard their show about 3 weeks ago. Wow. You remember the Lennon sisters and the McGuires and the Andrews sisters, the harmonies they had? Oh, these gals got that stuff. So if you want to hear some excellent music, it's all ladies. And Debbie, our piano player, also plays piano and accordion in that band. So we should check it out on the 24th. Please put it on your calendars. The 11th, September 11th, we are having an all music Sunday. Michael's going to play, Debbie's going to play, Sylvan's going to play, Wayne's going to be listening in Palm Springs, and we may have a few more coming on special music. We're waiting for on a music Sunday, so we're waiting for some saying yeses. So please come. We're going to do interesting things that day, something we've never done here before, but it's all about music, September 11th. And right after church, we're going to amble over to 42 Charles Street to the clubhouse where we're going to have a celebration of life for Bonnie's son, Guy. And I think Debbie's going to join us and play a little classical music, and I think Sylvan's going to join us with his violin and play a little classical music, and I'm going to do, I don't know, Waltz Across Texas or something. That's pretty classical too. So anyways, September 11th. Today is potluck. Doesn't make any difference if you brought fruit or not. We've got plenty always. And any other announcements? Yes.
So just talking about history, next Saturday there's a 90-minute walking tour of Katati that Joe and I are going to.
Great.
So if anybody wants more information about it, we can provide that to you after church.
Great. Is that the Historical Society putting that on?
Yeah, we're going to meet at the Historical Society. It's about 90 minutes. But...
Okay. Very excellent. That's a good tour too. And so, any other announcements? Well, if not, then let's stand up and sing When You Rule Your Mind. This is a new song, but the lyrics are great. So Michael, would you play it through once so we kind of get an idea of what it's supposed to sound like?
There's no people in the world unless you think there ought to be. When you rule your mind, you rule your world. Think life, think faith, think good, think hard when you're feeling low down. Think free when you want to fly. Think big if you want to grow up in the world. Unless you think you'll ever try. When you rule your mind, you rule your world. Think high, think free, think big, think light, full of good and good. Think true, let the spirits flow. Think loud, and there will be no one in the world. Unless you think you'll ever know. When you rule your mind, you rule your world. Think light, think truth, think
Oh, we should think about those lyrics. I think they're fantastic. Now, if you're here for the first time, please don't be frightened, but this is when we greet each other in the traditional Church of the Oaks fashion, or however you might be comfortable. Those are great lyrics. Yeah. I just was thumbing through it the other day and I saw that. That's what it's all about, perception. That's what we'll talk about today.
I never know how slow I can just
Jump on it. I just saw it real fast and I looked back and waited and said,
because I have no direction.
it's no.
Thank you.
It's worked out perfect. Perfect.
There's always new faces here.
Yeah, it's stirring a little.
Thank you.
Or just like a line or two.
No, you don't get the word. It's not bad. You're not sit down. You gotta get your words too, don't you? You're just standing up here and waiting.
Good to see you. Did you have a good time last night? Good.
So the one that's like
Dear River, that's it. Dear River. Yeah. I don't even know the name of my source.
You know, I was talking to Wayne the other day and he said, I really don't mind getting older. I just thought it would take longer. Look around this room. Look at the people sitting here. Look at this building. Look at Bonnie and Wayne, our heritage People, I won't rub it in. If I do, I'll use Bengay, okay? But we are so fortunate to be aware of what we have in each other, in these buildings. None of us coughed up $1 to buy this. We inherited. And that inheritance comes from just pledging to share our abundance, our time, our talent, our thought, and our treasure. Not even specifically with Church of the Oaks, with the universe, with our community, with each other. And when we share these different facets of abundance that each one of us has flowing through our life, nonstop, all the time, when we share that in our form of our time and our talent and our thought and our treasure, that's the 4 most important facets of our life. And we are practicing, we are becoming, we are the philosophy and the truth of abundance. That stream stays open, the flow is continued. And talk about joy and peace and hope. When you are sharing and you're feeling that flow through you, joy and peace and hope, you feel it, you know what that is. Let's read together our affirmation of abundance, may we? Gratitude is the key to the realization and manifestation of abundance. May we ponder that wisdom, sir. Thank you, Michael. As we prepare for our time of practice, let's sing Be Still and Know That I Am God.
Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God. Be still, be still, be still, and know that I am God.
Good morning. I almost forgot to come up. I was so blissed out there for a second. Let's just take a moment together to put our hands on our hearts and breathe into this beautiful we consciousness that we've created here together this morning. We do this every Sunday, but somehow it feels special today. There's a lighter, more expanded quality to our we consciousness. And for our practice today, I'm going to invite us to expand that in our awareness even more. Janet spoke in her mini message about many other beings in the universe, all of whom have souls. And I believe this as well. But the key thing to recognize in what we talk of as the soul is that, in fact, it is one. The same soul unites all of us. And words can be confusing, but I think of this as the oversoul. That part of us which is literally a child of God. I want you to envision that soul as a flame, golden white, residing in your heart. And you're going to inhale, and then as you exhale, you're going to see that flame expand a little bit. And inhale, and again expand it. Within this flame is contained your wholeness, that which has all you could ever want or need, already in seed form within it. Your task is to remember that magnificence, to call it forth, to expand in your awareness and your perception, and therefore in the world. As we continue to breathe and to grow this flame, you might notice your flame joining with those of others in the room. You might notice a sense of unity descending upon you. Whatever you notice, say yes to it. There is nothing more powerful than us together. Namaste.
I read a very interesting little short story this week, hence I came up with the title, Weed or Wildflower. And I'm going to read it to you because I couldn't say it better. It's very well done. Simply expressed, a weed is any plant that grows where it isn't wanted. Weeds are defined by their tendency to flourish at the expense of the gardener's overall vision. We tend to battle their presence in our yards. And it's interesting to consider, though, that a plant is a weed only with a certain context, which is to say that one person's weed is another person's wildflower. Most of us have pulled at least one dandelion up by its root and thrown it away in the interest of preserving the look of a perfectly beautiful green lawn. Yet the dandelion is good medicine, packed with healing properties and vitamin-rich leaves that are delicious and spicy surprise in a summer salad. In the wild, there is no such thing as a weed because the overall vision is in the hands of Mother Nature, who accommodates and incorporates all forms of life. In nature, balance is achieved over the long term, without the aid or the inference of a human supervisor. While one plant may prevail over others for a certain period of time, eventually it will reach an apex, and then it will naturally decline, allowing other forms to be born and survive. This self-regulating realm was the first garden of our ancestors, who learned the art of agriculture from studying the forests and the fields of a yet uncultivated earth. In a sense, these weeds, this wildness, they are pushing their way into a well-ordered plots, undermining more delicate flora and flourishing in spite of us. The next time you see a weed, you might want to look deeply into its roots, discover its name, its habits, and its possible uses. Instead of seeing an unwanted intruder, you might see a healer offering its leaves for a medicinal tea, or its flowers for a colorful salad. Or at the very least, if you look long enough, you will see a messenger from the wilderness of Mother Earth, reminding you that even in the most carefully controlled garden, she cannot ever be completely ruled out. And, you know, I think, well, it's certainly true of flora. I think it's true as we perceive other things in our life, like people and things we call facts. I think that most of us don't really look and see things as they are. I think we look and see things as we are. We are all, in this room, have many, many, many decades of conditioning, beliefs, environmental, conditional conformity that all of us have lived through. And everything we see goes through all those filters. I told a story several years ago, and I'm going to tell it again because I think it's a pretty cool story to begin with, but it helps us maybe see that the way things are truly aren't the way we see them all the time, and maybe we ought to take a closer look. You know, I think some of the conflicts that we have in the world could be maybe alleviated if, instead of jumping to an opinion or taking a side, if we just ask the question, I never thought of looking at it that way before. Might change some of our reactions or responses. The story I'm going to tell you today is about my great uncle. My grandfather died. His name was Jonas McCarty. He died in 1936. I never met him. But I did meet two of his brothers. I don't know how many people. McCartys were very prolific. I don't know how many kids there were, but I know there were two uncles and an aunt. I don't remember her name, but when I was 10, I saw my Uncle Elmas. And when I was about 12 at a family reunion, I actually for the first time saw my Uncle Cleve. His name was Cleveland McCarty. That's who I'm going to talk about today. Cleveland, he was my great uncle. He lived in South Central Ohio. That's where he grew up. And he was a farmer, moonshiner, young guy. And he fell in love with a gal that lived on a farm down the road. He was in his 20s, I expect, and she was 15. Her name was Jessie. And as long as I knew Uncle Cleve and Aunt Jessie, it was always Miss Jessie. So he went to see Miss Jessie's daddy to see if he could convince him that they should get married, and his daddy got the shotgun off the wall and said, "Leave and don't come back." And so, being his last name was McCarty, he pondered this a moment. Then he stole, at that time, brand spanking new Model T truck. Then he went to a town, put on a mask, took a 45, and robbed a bank. He didn't take all their money. He just said, fill this feed sack up. That's all I need. So I had this feed sack full of money and this stolen Model T truck. Then he snuck by at night and kidnapped Miss Jessie and drove south. He wound up with a feed sack full of money and a pretty little gal just outside of Orlando, Florida, a little town called Ocoee. It's about 6 miles from Winter Garden, where the circus used to winter out. So when he got there, he had this cash, so he bought 160 acres of mosquito-infested weeds. And he's planted orange trees. And he grew oranges. And he and Aunt Jessie actually got married. And he drove that Model T till the day he died. I drove it. I had a chance to drive it. He'd rebuilt the motor I don't know how many times. Last time I saw him was in 1966, and I'll talk more about that later. He was still driving that Model T. That's what he took his oranges to Winter Garden. Back in the 40s, he decided that it was foolish for everybody to be competing against everybody, and he was the founder of the Florida Citrus Growers Association, and they put in the very first co-op orange juice plant in Winter Garden. And it since grew. The Florida Citrus Growers Association is huge, but he founded it. And he and Aunt Jessie never had any kids. They lived in this house that he built back in the 20s and never had air conditioning. And they had a lady that worked for him in the house, and I think her name was Sarah, and she was a black lady. And when I was in the Air Force, I grew up going down there for vacations down to Florida. He had a lake on his property called Stark Lake. Ocoee, the little city of Ocoee, wraps around Stark Lake, and he sits right at the north end of it. And then his orange trees are behind his house. And I was in the Air Force, and I was on tour. I flew on 130s. I was a loadmaster, and we carried 6 weeks, twice a year, the Air Force Thunderbirds maintenance team. And we'd go on a Thunderbird tour, go into all the cities. We'd stay for 3 days while they did their air shows. We'd fly for an hour, stay for 3 more days at the Holiday Inn, and it was a cool, really cool job. But anyway, we were going to Orlando, and this was in 1967. And I called my great aunt and uncle, and said, can I come and see you? Absolutely, come on over. So I rented a car and I went over. And we talked, and Uncle Cleve showed me that the Model T was still running. We went down and caught some fish for Miss Sarah to cook up a mess of fish for supper. And we did. And we had supper, and we were sitting, no air conditioning, and Florida's very hot and humid in the evening, lots of mosquitoes. And so we're sitting on the front porch, and Sarah brought us out this pitcher of iced tea. And we'd had a wonderful dinner, and it's just evening and just nice. And I'm talking to my aunt and uncle and, trying to catch up. And it's just so peaceful. He said, Miss Jess and me's had one beautiful life. He said, and I'm going to quote now that may make some people uneasy, but it's a quote, and it's part of what my talk is based on. He said, and we've been so successful with the orange juice. And he said, and Pat, I got to tell you, I got the best bunch of niggers I've ever had. My flight engineer was a black man. He was closer than my brother. I was so sensitive. And Sarah was standing right there. And she didn't say a thing. She said, I think I'll get another pitcher of tea. Anybody want some? And Uncle Cleve said, that'd be nice, Sarah. I wanted to hit my uncle, the bigot. And so she was standing, and I followed her in the house, and she was in the kitchen. And I said, Sarah, how can you put up with that? She said, oh, your uncle don't mean nothing by the way he talks. All white folks talks that way. And I said, he's a bigot. I said, how can you? And she got mad at me. She said, young man, you sit down. I'm going to tell you something about your uncle you need to know. She said, there ain't a Negro in Florida that wouldn't give their right arm to work for your uncle and your aunt. They are the finest people anybody, finest white folks any of us have ever worked for. She said, they never had no kids. And right after the Second World War, the GI Bill came out, and all the white soldiers got a chance to go to college and buy a house. Wasn't like that for us Negroes. She said, and your Aunt Jessie thought that was awful. And she and your Uncle Cleve decided that they could do something for our kids to where they wouldn't have to grow up and work on farm labor for the rest of their life. They could have the same opportunities as anybody else. Your uncle, you just called a bigot, started what he called Miss Jessie's School Fund. And since 1946, any one of our children that was smart enough to get in college, that college was paid for entirely. Books, travel, anything, by Miss Jessie's School Fund. There's only one stipulation. We ain't never allowed to tell no white folks about that, because neighbors wouldn't take kindly to him helping us that way. But don't you ever let me hear you say nothing bad about your uncle, ever. Uncle Cleve, bank robber, car thief, pedophile, kidnapper, entrepreneur, humanitarian, civil rights activist. Weed or wildflower? And I got an idea. There's not a person in this room that doesn't have a similar paradoxical story about themselves. Every single one of us. We've done things perhaps taken out of context. Wouldn't look or sound very good at all. And we've done things that we could maybe be called a saint for. Every one of us. And we're so quick to develop a perception. I'm reminded, so many people say a glass half full or a glass half empty. Mr. George Carlin said, well, it's absolutely a glass that's way bigger than it needs to be. It's all about perception. How do we look at things? There was somebody that said that if you're on a lake, only the smooth, quiet lake gives a perfect reflection of the trees and the scenery around it. And perhaps we could say that only a calm, smooth, quiet mind can give an accurate reflection of what is. Something to think about. We talk about expanding our ability to be, the word won't come out of my mouth now, expanding our perception, our what we see. What's the word I'm looking for? We say it all the time. Elevate our consciousness by awareness. Awareness, that's the word. Okay, so how aware are we when we just walk down the street, when we talk to other people? I wasn't gonna do it, but I'm gonna tell you another story about Uncle Cleve's family and my grandfather. When I was 10 years old, my dad took me down to a town called Catawba Station down on the Ohio River. His uncle Elmus, Cleve's brother, was very ill and not expected to live. He wanted to see him before he passed. So we went down to this little town called Catawba Station. And Catawba Station was a church and one of those one pump gas stations that you had drove under a front porch to get to, and this big Quonset hut, which was the town coffee shop, feed store, general store, everything. If you needed it, you just went down to the store. So we went in there, and there were guys sitting around. There was a coffee shop. It was the place everybody in town gathered. And we went in there, I remember when I was a kid, and guys in gumboots, bib overalls, and those felt ball caps that farmers wore. And they were sitting around playing dominoes and a game called euchre, card game, drinking coffee, telling stories and lies. And it was just, that's how it was. And that was vivid in my memory when I was 10. My dad passed away in 98. And I thought, well, I'm back in Ohio, probably not going to get this opportunity again. So I went down to see his living relatives that were still. I went down to Catawba Station. I don't know why. I just did. And there's that Quonset hut. So I walked in. I got a coffee. It hadn't changed in 50 years. I hadn't been there in 50 years. And I was sitting there, and there was this old man. And this is what I'm going to talk about awareness. He said, "Hey, young fella." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Which one of Jonas's kids do you belong to?" Jonas was my grandfather. He had 18 children. He died in 1935, and he knew I was one of those kids. And it gets better. He said, "Which one of them Jonas's kids?" I said, "Wayne." He said, "Oh, he's the one that went to the army in the big war." He said, "Hey, was you his boy when he come down to see Elmas right before he died? That boy was with him." How aware, and stupid me. I was caught up in, how old is this dude? I never asked him his name. He could have been married to my aunt. He could have been part of my. I was dumbfounded at, the guy had to be over 100 years old. He had to be. And how many of us look at people with that kind of awareness? We can tell you about every function on our smartphone, but what's Wayne wearing today? What color is Michael's tie? But we know we spend a huge amount of time having intimate relationship with our devices. And the things that really matter, these human relationships we have, this oneness with each other. Why don't we pay more attention? We can. We have that power, that ability. Oh. And you talk about having your life enriched. Google doesn't do a darn thing for your life. But knowing Michael and Janet and Joan, that enriches our lives. And as we know and interact, it enriches their lives too. It makes this life experience worth living. I think that most of us grow up and live the bulk of our lives seeing this as a life experience of many limitations and problems, when in fact this life experience offers us unlimited opportunity and chance of experience. Unlimited. We can't even wrap our heads around what that means. And we prefer to look at the negatives and the limitations that may or may not truly exist based on our own filtered perceptions. I don't know. I hope that each of us can spend time with each other. We're going over to potluck. Look at that person, really look at that person sitting across the table. And when they talk, just listen. Ask a question. If there's something you want to know, ask a question and listen to the response. Every person in this room has a gazillion and a half experiences that are different than yours. Maybe some of them are similar, but every one is different and unique. And what a treasure trove of wisdom, advice. Oh, don't do that. That hurt me awful. That's great wisdom. That's great experience to share. And in that sharing, that's when we have that oneness that Natalie was talking about this morning, that we are all connected. Mother Nature actually connected us. And each one of us, are we a weed or a flower? Oh, what day is it? What time is it? Depending on our perception and our consciousness at this moment in time. We have peace, we have joy, and we have hope every morning. And as we walk out of here, let's create some peace and joy and hope. And let's interact with each other. And let's hold hands and stick together. Because my mom said if we do that, everything's going to be all right. And I think she was right. I'm sure of it. Let's stand up and sing, "Let there be peace on earth." And may each one of us be that peace.
Let there be peace on earth, peace on this the bond we know. With every step I take, I see my joyous smile. To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. And every peace on earth and every pathway free.
Oh, we got to do a little amen stuff. Amen.